When you need to write a literary essay, it's important to know how to do that, because writing a literary essay is different from writing an argumentative essay, an expository essay, or something like a problem-solution essay. Now, it's important to know that a literary analysis or a literary essay is different from a rhetorical analysis or a rhetorical essay. A rhetorical essay focuses on the piece of content as a way or piece of communication, whereas a literary analysis looks at the content, finds metaphors, and looks at links between elements of that writing. So, a literary analysis looks at details in the story, whereas a rhetorical analysis focuses on details in the language and the manner of communication. Now, before we dive into what you need to do when you want to write a literary essay, we should look at the structure. Like all other essays, this essay also has an introduction, it has some body paragraphs, and it has a conclusion. In your introduction, you want to include a thesis statement, and you want to make sure that your introduction follows the funnel shape. The conclusion follows the upside down funnel shape. More on that in the linked video. Now, to start your literary analysis, you need to read the work closely, and you do this by practicing close reading. Now, close reading is not literally close reading. It's reading the work from a different perspective. Now, this means that you're not looking at the general big picture of the story. And you don't do this because you don't have to provide a summary. You're looking at the details. You're looking at the things that make the story a good story. A literary analysis of a poem focuses a lot on literary devices, but a literary analysis of a story or a novel might take a different approach. Now, while you're close reading, you want to think of questions that you might ask yourself, like why does this happen? Or what does this mean? Or maybe why does the author choose to use these particular words to describe the character that we're reading about? Answering those questions will definitely help you while you're practicing your close reading. For example, when you're reading Flowers for Algernon, which you should, I put the link in the description, you want to think of something like the flowers for Algernon. Why did the main character leave flowers on Algernon's grave, and why did the author decide to name the book Flowers for Algernon? Now, when we know that we're focusing on the flowers, we want to look for other clues in the story that point towards these flowers, because there are some other references to flowers or blossoming or blooming and dying throughout the story. And if we can link those things together to our thesis, we'll have a good literary analysis. But before we get there, we need to practice close reading. So I need to think of things that stand out while I'm reading the novel. One thing I recommend my students to do is to use a highlighter or a pencil to mark down things while you're reading. So keep track of interesting things by using sticky notes, making some notes, or just highlighting parts of the text. Now, after you've collected your evidence, we can move on to actually formulating our thesis statement. If you have a prompt or a question, your thesis statement should be the answer to that question or should be in line with the prompt that you're given. When we read your thesis statement, we should know what you're going to talk about in your essay. Now, keep this in mind because the thesis statement is the aim of your essay. Your thesis statement is still malleable though, so even when you're writing you find some other examples or some other evidence that fits your prompt better than the one that you've made up, you can always change your thesis statement. It's never set in stone. And it's always very useful to check whether you're still doing what you set out in your thesis statement. Because you can end up with something else in your essay and that doesn't really fit your thesis statement anymore, then you definitely want to adjust your thesis statement so that the reader or your teacher still knows what you're going to do in your essay. After you've formulated your thesis statement, you can move on to creating your outline. Now, outlines are very useful when you're writing a literary essay because by using an outline, you can check whether the evidence you've collected in previous steps still fits your thesis statement and thus still fits the prompt or question that you were given. Using an outline also gives structure to your essay, and if you want to learn how to write an outline, check out the link in the description. For now, it's important to know that when you're creating your outline, you still follow Peel or TXXXC, or you're using levels to create your paragraphs. Now, keep this in mind when you're creating your outline. Each paragraph should focus on one thought and cover this thought extensively. Don't add new ideas to your paragraph if it doesn't fit the content of that particular paragraph. The outline is key here. Using your outline to check whether your paragraphs are focused will only ensure that you don't add new ideas and thus unfinished and unsupported thoughts to your essays. And while you're working on your outline, you can still regularly check whether you're doing what you set out to do in your thesis statement. This will only ensure that you have a good essay and that your essay will definitely be of high quality. Finally, after you've done your outline, you can sit down and write your essay. Now, don't make this mistake that only beginners make. Don't start with your introduction. Your introduction should be written at the end. And the reason for this is that the introduction should follow the funnel shape, which means that it starts very broadly and ends specific with your thesis statement. Now, if you don't know what you're going to write about in your essay, you don't know what you need to put in your introduction. So that's why the first thing that you write when you're sitting down and ready to write is your first body paragraph. Write your body paragraphs and end by writing your conclusion. Don't forget, check regularly whether your topic still fits the thesis statement and the prompts that you were given. After you've written your conclusion, you can start over and write your introduction. So after you've closely read your work, you've collected evidence, you've built your thesis statement, an outline, and you've written your essay, you're done. And you can do the editing part, which is putting it through Grammarly, filtering out your grammatical errors, and maybe use some words and synonyms to enhance your writing. Now, there are some caveats that you need to think of when you're creating and when you're writing a literary essay. Now, the first caveat is that you're not writing a book review, you're writing a literary analysis. And that means that you shouldn't give your opinions, but give findings from the piece of work. Of course, you need to think about it and say something useful about the content that you've read, but you're not giving your opinion. You're not focusing on what it made you feel or how you felt while reading the story. You're focusing on findings, things that stand out in your work. So the first caveat, don't write a review, provide an analysis. The second caveat is overlooking things. Sometimes people think, well, this is not very important, we don't need to focus on this. But remember that authors make deliberate choices. They put things in their pieces of work for a reason. Everything is relevant in literature. So don't overlook things and don't put things in the bin because you think it's irrelevant. Everything is in a story for a reason. And finally, and I think this is the most important caveat you should think of, don't haste your way into your essay. Fully understand the story, the characters, the setting, the scene, the literary devices before you start writing. You don't want to write an essay that's superficial because you want full marks. So before you start writing whatever you need to do, focus on understanding the story or the piece of writing or the piece of literature first. If you're writing a literary analysis of Flowers by Miley Cyrus, listen to the song a gazillion times and make sure that you understand everything. Is there a word you don't know in the story? Look it up. Is there something that makes no sense? Check it before you start writing. Don't haste your way into your essay, but fully comprehend and understand everything of the piece of work that you're analyzing before you write the essay. And so, these are the steps you need to take when you're ready to write a literary essay. Did you know that ChatGPT can also write literary essays? I took up the challenge and I analyzed a literary essay written by ChatGPT, so make sure that you're subscribed and have your notification bell on so that you know when this video will be out. For now, if you found this video useful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe so that you know when one of my other videos will be out. Let me know in the comments, what is the prompt that your English teacher gave you? Thank you for watching and I hope to see you in one of my next videos.